Once upon a time, there was a boy named Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin loved his name, even though it was hard for other people to say. He didn't care that it wasn't simple like Davy or Bobby, or easy to say like Timmy or Scotty. No, Rumpelstiltskin loved his name because it was special. And he also loved it because his mommy and daddy had chosen that name just for him. So when people had trouble saying it, he didn't get upset. He would just play a little game, like he did on the first day of school. That day, the teacher asked everyone to stand up in front of the class and introduce themselves. Rumpelstiltskin was last to go, but he wasn't scared. Proudly, he stood up in front of everyone and said, "My name is Rumpelstiltskin. I know it's a hard name to say, so I have a treat for the first person who can say it correctly." The whole class got very excited. A treat? They started practicing immediately. "Can you help me practice their name?" They said, Rumpy?
Rumpy.
"Keep trying," said Rumpelstiltskin. Rumple?
Rumple.
Rumpelstilly?
Rumpelstiltskin.
You're getting closer.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Yes! Rumpelstiltskin, a little girl yelled from the back of the room. "That's it," clapped Rumpelstiltskin. "You said my name. Hooray! And here's your treat." Rumpelstiltskin reached into his pocket and pulled out a shiny piece of gold. "Ooh," said the class. But the little girl from the back of the room said something else. She said, "I don't want a shiny piece of gold." "Would you want a shiny piece of gold?" "Yeah." "You don't?" asked Rumpelstiltskin. "No," said the girl. "I just want to be your friend." "Oh, why, thank you," said Rumpelstiltskin with a smile. "And I want to be your friend, too." Rumpelstiltskin gave the girl a hug. One of the other boys in the class raised his hand and said, "I want to be your friend, too, but I have a problem." "What's that?" asked Rumpelstiltskin. "I still can't say your name." Rumpelstiltskin laughed. "That's okay. I know that my name is very different. I have a rhyme I can teach you to help you remember it. Will you help me say this rhyme?"
Yeah.
Let's see what he said. "Great," said the boy.
Great.
So Rumpelstiltskin cleared his throat and said, "Even though it's different and doesn't sound the same, Rumpelstiltskin is my name." The rest of the class tried the rhyme. Can you try it with me? Okay. Even though it's different
Even though it's different.
and doesn't sound the same,
Doesn't sound the same.
Rumpelstiltskin
Is my name.
is my name, yes. Yay, they all clapped. That rhyme helps us remember how to say your name. Now we can all be friends. And they were. They were friends forever and ever, and those children never forgot how to say Rumpelstiltskin's name ever again. And they all lived happily ever after.
The end.
Good job.
Thanks.
Are you ready? All right, here we go. Let's read. Once upon a time, there was a village called Fibberstown. Nobody in Fibberstown ever told the truth. They only told fibs. During the daytime, they would say that it was night. At night, they would say that it was daytime. Children would tell their parents that they cleaned their rooms, even if they hadn't. And parents would give their children bread and tell them that it was chocolate cake. People in Fibberstown were not happy. It was very hard to live in a place where everyone around fibbed all the time. They never knew what was true and what wasn't. One day, a toy maker named Geppetto came to town to open a toy shop. Geppetto was so surprised to hear everyone fibbing so much. He knew that the people in Fibberstown would be much happier if they learned how to tell the truth. That way, they would be able to believe everything that the other people told them. Geppetto knew he had to help. So Geppetto got to work in his toy shop. He worked and worked until he made the perfect toy. It was a puppet named Pinocchio. Pinocchio looked like other puppets. His arms and legs were made out of wood, his face painted with bright colors. But Pinocchio was special. Geppetto sprinkled some special magic powder on it to give it a secret special power. Then he made some more Pinocchio puppets. Geppetto wanted to help the people in Fibberstown learn that telling fibs was not very nice, and the Pinocchio puppet's special power would help. You see, whenever someone held one of them and told a fib, the Pinocchio's puppet nose would grow. The next day, Geppetto put the Pinocchio puppets on the shelf, and the children started coming. The first people in the store were a little girl and her mommy. The little girl grabbed the Pinocchio puppet off the shelf and said, "I'm smaller than this puppet." Suddenly, Pinocchio's nose started to grow. "What's happening?" asked the little girl. Geppetto smiled as he explained, "This is a special puppet. It can tell if you're fibbing. And when you're telling a fib, its nose grows." "Really?" asked the little girl. "Yes," said Geppetto. "Why don't you try saying something that's true and see what happens?" So the girl held up the Pinocchio puppet and said, "I'm bigger than this puppet." Suddenly, Pinocchio's nose went back to its normal size. "It worked," cheered the little girl. "When I told the truth, its nose went back to its regular size." The girl's mommy wanted to try too, so she picked up the Pinocchio puppet and said, "The sky is yellow." Suddenly, Pinocchio's nose started to grow again. Then the mommy said, "The sky is blue," and Pinocchio's nose went back to its regular size. Wow! "You know, I'm happy that this puppet is making me tell the truth," said the mommy. "It's a good feeling to know that people can believe what you're saying." The girl and her mommy told everyone in Fibberstown about the Pinocchio puppets and how when you hold one, you have to tell the truth. Soon, everyone was coming to Geppetto's store to buy one. Geppetto couldn't believe what he was seeing. Everyone was carrying a Pinocchio puppet, and they were all telling the truth. During the daytime, they said it was daytime. At night, they said it was night. Children only told their parents they cleaned their rooms when they had. And when parents said that they were giving their children chocolate cake, it was actually chocolate cake. Everyone was much happier now. They were so thankful that Geppetto and his Pinocchio puppets had taught them all about telling the truth. They even changed the name of their town from Fibberstown to Truth Town. Everyone loved telling the truth, and they loved knowing that everything they were hearing was also telling the truth. And the people in Truth Town lived happily ever after. The end. Good job, Noel.
Would you like me to read your story about kings and queens and princes and princesses?
Yeah.
Okay. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful kingdom. The kingdom was full of kings and queens and princes and princesses and even an emperor. Every year, there was a huge parade in the kingdom. Everyone came to the parade. It was always the most fun celebration. And it was beautiful to watch too, because everyone wore brightly colored clothes. They wore green pants and red shirts and purple capes and pink crowns. It was quite a sight to see. Do you like wearing clothes with colors in them?
Yeah.
Me too. But one year, when the kings, queens, princes, and princesses and the emperor had their meeting to plan the parade, things changed. One of the kings stood up and said, "This year I am going to wear gray pants, a gray shirt, a gray cape, and a gray crown. And I think everyone else should wear gray too." The rest of the kings looked at each other. They really wanted to wear green and red and purple and pink, but they were afraid to speak out. So they just went along with what the first king said. They agreed to wear gray. Do you think that's fair of him to say that? I don't think so either. The queens, princes, princesses, and the emperor all agreed too, but they weren't happy about it. They all wanted to wear green and red and purple and pink, but they were afraid to speak out too. The emperor went back to his castle. He went to his closet and looked at his clothing. Hanging in his closet were green pants and red shirts and purple capes and pink crowns. He was very sad. He wanted to wear these clothes to the parade. He didn't want to wear gray. As the emperor was looking at his clothing, his son walked in the room. "Daddy, why are you so sad?" said his son. "I want to wear all my bright, beautiful clothing to the parade," said the emperor. "So why don't you?" asked his son. The emperor shrugged. "You see, everyone else is going to wear gray." "So?" asked his son. "Why do you have to go along with what everyone else wants? Why can't you do your own thing?" The emperor thought about his son's words all night. He thought about how he had gone along with what everyone else wanted when it wasn't what he wanted. And finally, he realized that his son was right. He could do his own thing. So, on the morning of the parade, the emperor, dressed in his green pants, his red shirt, his purple cape, and his pink crown, he and his son walked proudly down the parade. When they got there, the emperor saw that he was the only person wearing bright colors. Everyone else was wearing gray. Being dressed differently made the emperor nervous, but he kept walking. "Hey," said one of the kings, who was dressed all in gray, "why are you wearing bright colors? Everyone is wearing gray this year." "Well, I decided that I wanted to wear bright colors instead," answered the emperor with a smile. The king was so confused. "But don't you have to be like everyone else? Don't we all have to do the same things?" he asked. "Do you think he should be like everyone else or be the way he wants to be?"
Be the way that he wants to be.
"Yeah, I think he should be that way too." "I'll let my son explain it to you," said the emperor as he stepped aside. His young son took a step forward, looked up at the king and said, "Sir, people can choose to do what everyone else is doing, or they can choose to do their own thing. It's up to each person to decide." "Really?" asked the king. "I always thought that I had to do what everyone else did." "Oh no," said the emperor's son. "You can do your own thing." "Wow," said the king. Then the king went over to the people in the parade and made an announcement. He told them that they could wear whatever they wanted. They didn't all have to be the same. You think that's good for him to say? That everyone could wear what they want?
Yeah.
I think so too. So, some of the people ran home to get brightly colored clothes, while others stayed in their gray clothes because that's what they really wanted to wear. In the end, there was a beautiful parade, full of red and green and purple and pink and gray. The emperor was sure it was the best parade ever. From that day on, the kings and the queens and the princes and the princesses and the emperor all dressed the way they wanted to, even if it wasn't the same as how everyone else dressed, and they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Once upon a time, there was a boy named Tom. Tom loved to play basketball with his friends, but there was one problem. His friends wouldn't let him play. You see, Tom was very small. He was smaller than all his friends, and they didn't think he could play because he was so different. Every day after school, all the boys would go to the park to play basketball. Tom would go too, hoping that this would be the day he'd get to play. But every day the boys told Tom that he was too small, so Tom would just sit and watch. Tom was very sad. He wanted to be big like the other boys. He hated being the smallest, and every night he made a wish. He wished to be big, but every morning he saw that he was still small. Why do I have to be different from the other boys? Tom asked his mommy. Being different isn't a bad thing, said his mommy. Being different is good. It means you're special. But Tom didn't feel very special. He just felt sad. The next day, Tom went to the park, hoping that this would be the day the big boys would let him play. But they didn't. They said he was too small. Tom started to cry. He cried and cried until he heard someone else crying too. He opened his eyes and saw one of the big boys had fallen into a big bed of roses. The boy was holding up his hand and pointing into the thorn that was sticking out. "It hurts," cried the boy. "Someone get it out." The other big boys tried to take the thorn out, but their fingers were too big. "If only I had a tiny little fingers," the boy cried. "Then you could help me." The boys looked around. Who had the tiniest little fingers? Suddenly, one of the boys had an idea. "Tom," he called, "we need your help." Tom stood up. "You do?" "Yes, our friend had a thorn stuck in his hand and we need someone with tiny little fingers to take it out." Tom looked at his hands. His fingers were tiny. He could help. So Tom went over to the boys, climbed up on his hand, and used his tiny little fingers to pull out the thorn. "Hooray, you did it," the boys cheered. Tom was so happy. He ran home to tell his mommy. "See," said Mommy, "being different is a great thing." Is it? Of course, all the other boys are the same size and they couldn't help, but you are different. You're smaller than others, and if you weren't so little, you wouldn't have been able to help your friend. That's true. So are you still sad that you're different? Tom shook his head. No, now I'm happy. You were right, being different makes me special. The next day after school, all the boys went to the park to play basketball. But this time, they didn't tell Tom he couldn't play. No, this time, something amazing happened. When Tom asked if he could play, they said yes. "We're sorry we didn't let you play before," the big boy said. "We didn't think you could because you were so different. But now we know that we were wrong. There's a lot of things you can do." "Right," said Tom. As he picked up the basketball, he hopped on one of the big boy's shoulder and together they ran up and down the court and made a basket. Swoosh! The big boys never told Tom he couldn't play with them again, and Tom never felt sad about being different ever again. Now Tom felt special and happy because he could do the same things as the rest of the kids, and even some special tricks that they couldn't do. Tom lived happily ever after. The end. Give me a hug.
Once upon a time, there was a town named Bremen. And in that town was a farm. And on that farm lived a donkey, a dog, and a cat. These animals loved each other, and they loved their farm. But something was missing. They had no music. "Hee-haw," brayed the donkey. "Life on this farm would be so much better if we had music. Then we could sing and dance." The donkey didn't know what else to do, so he stood in the field and made his noise over and over. "Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw." Across the farm, the dog's ears perked up. What was that sound? He followed it all the way to the field. When he got there, he saw the donkey. "Woof," barked the dog. "I heard a sound. Was it music?" The donkey shook his head. How could it be music? We don't have a piano. I wish we had a piano. Then I could learn to play and we'd have music. The dog nodded. And I wish we had some drums. I could learn to play and then we'd have even more music. The donkey and the dog didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field and made their noises over and over. Hee-haw, woof, hee-haw, woof, hee-haw, woof, hee-haw, woof. From the barn, the cat's ears perked up. What was that sound? She followed it all the way to the field. When she got there, she saw the donkey and the dog. Meow, mewed the cat. I heard a sound. Was it music? The donkey and the dog shook their heads. How could there be music? We don't have a piano or drums. I wish we had those things because then we'd have music. The cat nodded. And I wish we had a horn. I could learn to play and we'd have even more music. The donkey and the dog and the cat didn't know what else to do, so they sat in the field and made their noises over and over. Hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow. From high up in a tree, a bird's ears perked up. She was so excited because she knew exactly what that sound was. She flew down and followed it all the way to the field. When she got there, she saw the donkey and the cat and the dog. Chirp, crowed the bird. I heard a sound, and it was music. The donkey and the dog and the cat shook their heads. How could there be music? We don't have a piano or drums or a horn. Without those things, we can't have music. The bird smiled. That's not true. You can have music without a piano or drums or a horn. You can? Of course. Just listen to this. And the bird started chirping the most beautiful melody. The donkey and the dog and the cat couldn't believe it. The bird was making music without a piano or drums or a horn. When the bird finished her song, the other animals clapped. They wanted to learn how to make music too, but they couldn't chirp like the bird. How were they going to make music? You already were making music, the bird said. You just didn't know you were doing it. All you have to do is put your voices together, and you'll have a song. The animals weren't so sure, but they decided to give it a try. They started off quietly. Hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow, hee-haw, woof, meow. They were doing it. They were making music. They got even louder, and this time the bird joined in. Hee-haw, woof, meow, chirp, hee-haw, woof, meow, chirp, hee-haw, woof, meow, chirp. It was the most beautiful music they had ever heard. The donkey and the dog and the cat and the bird started traveling from farm to farm, playing music for all the other animals. They became the best musicians in all of Bremen, and they lived happily ever after. The end.
I am going to read you a story. Once upon a time, in a valley between two mountains stood the town of Hamelin. Every spring, all the birds in the land would fly over Hamelin. As they moved from one mountain to the other, it was a magnificent sight to see. One bird would fly in front and sing the most beautiful bird songs. All the other birds would listen for the music, and that way they know which way to get to the other mountain. But one year, the singing bird had a sore throat. She couldn't make the beautiful music she usually made. Oh no! Without the singing bird's music, all the birds got lost. They didn't know which way to go. They flew in circles, and when they got tired, they landed in Hamelin. There were birds everywhere. There were birds in trees and on houses and even on people's heads. The people of Hamelin knew that they had to help the birds find their way to the mountain. But how? I have an idea, said a little boy named Piper. The birds are lost because the singing bird, who usually leads them with her music, has a sore throat. If we could make the same sounds as the singing bird, we could lead the birds up to the mountain. That's a great idea, cheered the people of Hamelin. So Piper got to work trying to pick an instrument that sounded like the beautiful bird song, which had such a pretty high sound. First, Piper picked up a drum. He took it over to the birds and began playing. Bang, bang, bang. He started marching toward the mountain, but the birds didn't follow him. Why not? Ah, said Piper, this drum does not sound like the beautiful bird song. I need to try another instrument. Next, Piper picked up a guitar. He took it over to the birds and began playing. Strum, strum, strum. He started marching toward the mountain, but the birds didn't follow him. Why not? Ah, said Piper, this guitar does not sound like the beautiful bird song. I need to try another instrument. Next, Piper picked up maracas. He took them over to the birds and began playing. Shake, shake, shake. He started marching toward the mountain, but the birds didn't follow him. Why not? Ah, said Piper, these maracas do not sound like the beautiful bird song. I need to try another instrument. Next, Piper picked cymbals. He took them over to the birds and began playing. Crash, crash, crash. He started marching toward the mountain, but the birds didn't follow him. Why not? Ah, said Piper, these cymbals do not sound like the beautiful bird song. I need to try another instrument. Next, Piper picked up a flute. He took the flute over to the birds and began playing. Woo, woo, woo. He started marching toward the mountains, and this time, the birds started following him. The flute sounded like the beautiful bird song. Hooray! Piper started blowing his flute louder and louder until all the birds could hear him. Soon, all the birds in the land started following Piper and his flute. Piper marched, and behind him, the birds flew and flew. They went all the way through Hamelin and all the way up the mountain. When they got to the top, all the birds gathered round Piper to thank him for his help. The singing bird said, Piper, we couldn't have done it if you haven't found the right instrument. Now, if I ever have a sore throat again, we will know exactly what to do. Thank you. You are very welcome, said Piper as he turned to walk home. Piper was so proud that he had helped the birds find their way to the mountain, and the people of Hamelin were proud too. The birds, Piper, and all the people of Hamelin lived happily ever after. The end. Did you like the story?
This is a story about the Golden Goose. Once upon a time, there were 3 brothers who loved to go camping. They would go for long walks in the woods, eat around a campfire, and sleep in tents. Their mommy always packed lots of food for them to eat on their camping trips. She packed hot dogs, juice, and their favorite food in the whole world, cupcakes. Once, when they were camping, it started to rain. We didn't bring umbrellas, said the brothers. Oh no! I have an idea, said the oldest brother. I am going to walk around the woods and see if I can find someone who has an umbrella to share. Since he knew he would be gone for a long time, he took some cupcakes and put them in a bag in case he got hungry.
Cupcake.
Right. So the oldest brother started off. He walked and walked, and it rained and rained. Finally, he saw a golden goose splashing around in the puddle. The goose was having so much fun getting wet he wasn't even using his umbrella. The oldest brother ran over to the goose, hoping that he would share his umbrella, since he didn't seem to need one. But before he could ask, the goose asked him something. "Excuse me, young boy, I am very hungry. Do you have any food to share?"
Yes.
The oldest brother thought about the cupcakes he had in his bag. If he gave them to the goose, then he wouldn't have any for himself. He didn't want to share. So he looked at the goose and said, "No, I don't have any food. Goodbye."
Goodbye.
The oldest brother turned and ran back to the campgrounds. When the others saw that he didn't bring back an umbrella, the middle brother stood up and said, "I'll go next, and I'll take your bag of cupcakes in case I get hungry." So the middle brother started off. He walked and walked, and it rained and rained. Finally, he saw the same golden goose splashing in the same puddle. The goose was having so much fun getting wet that he wasn't using his umbrella. The middle brother ran over to the goose, hoping that he would share his umbrella since he didn't need it. But before he could ask, the goose asked him something. "Excuse me, young boy," said the goose. "I am very hungry. Do you have any food to share?"
Cupcake.
That's right. The middle brother thought about the cupcakes he had in his bag. If he gave them to the goose, then he wouldn't have any for himself. He didn't want to share. So he looked at the goose and said, "No, I don't have any food. Goodbye."
Bye.
The middle brother turned and ran back to the campgrounds. When the other brother saw that he didn't bring back an umbrella either, the youngest brother stood up and said, "I'll go next, and I'll take your bag of cupcakes in case I get hungry." So the youngest brother started off. He walked and walked, and it rained and rained. Finally, he saw the golden goose again. The youngest brother ran over to the golden goose, hoping that he would share his umbrella. But before he could ask, the golden goose asked him something. "Excuse me, young boy," said the goose. "I am very hungry. Do you have any food to share?"
Cupcake.
That's right. The youngest brother reached into his bag and pulled out the cupcakes. "Here," he said to the goose, "I am happy to share my cupcakes with you." The goose gobbled up the cupcakes and said, "Thank you. Thank you for sharing with me. I am so hungry. Now that you have done something nice for me, can I do something nice for you?" "Well," said the youngest brother, "it is raining, and my brothers and I don't have an umbrella." The goose smiled as he pointed to his umbrella lying next to the puddle. "I like to get wet, so you can have mine, because I like to share too." "Thank you. Thank you for sharing with me," said the youngest son as he took the umbrella back to the campgrounds. "How did you get this?" asked his brothers. The youngest brother sat under the umbrella and explained, "I saw this goose who was hungry. I shared my cupcakes with him, and then he shared his umbrella with me." The middle brother and the older brother remembered that they had not shared their cupcakes with the same goose, and they felt bad. The brothers learned an important lesson on that camping trip. They learned that if they shared things with people who needed them, good things will happen for everyone. That day, the brothers shared the umbrella that the goose gave them. They also shared everything else from that day on, and they lived happily ever after. The end. It's very good to share, right? You share with your family and your sister and everybody else, right? Give me a hug. Once upon a time, there was a family of ducks that lived in a fountain. It was a beautiful fountain with twinkly lights and shooting streams of water that floated through the air. The ducks were even more beautiful than the fountain. They had fluffy yellow feathers, shiny white beaks, and their quacks sounded like lovely music. They even had pretty duck names like Dina Duck and Denny Duck. The ducks loved their family and their home. They splashed and swam together all day. Every Sunday, children came to visit and would feed the ducks lots of bread. They'd even take pictures of the ducks doing special water tricks. One day, the mommy duck had an announcement. There was going to be a new duckling joining their happy family. She pointed to the egg sitting in a nest next to the fountain. Soon the egg would hatch, and the duck family would have a new baby brother or sister. The ducks couldn't wait for the egg to hatch. They were so excited to see the duckling, to brush her soft yellow feathers, to feed her shiny white beak, and to listen to her musical quacks. They waited and waited until one day, the egg finally started to crack. The duck family gathered around and lifted their wings to get ready to clap at their beautiful new duckling. But they didn't clap. They didn't know what to do. This little duckling didn't have soft yellow feathers or a shiny white beak. Instead, the feathers had brown and white spots, except on its head where they were bright green. And the beak was bright red. And its quacking was more like a loud honk. Oh no. The mommy duck went over to quack hello to her little baby. She didn't care if her duckling looked different. She loved it anyway. But the older duck brothers and sisters weren't so nice. They didn't give the duckling a pretty name like Delia or Daisy. No, they just called it the Ugly Duckling. They laughed at the Ugly Duckling's loud honk, and they wouldn't teach the Ugly Duckling any of their favorite water tricks. The older ducklings thought they were better than the Ugly Duckling. They didn't listen when their mommy told them not to call their little sister mean names like ugly. They just kept doing it. The Ugly Duckling cried, and the mommy duck hugged her very tight. "I love you," the mommy duckling said, "and I know that you are beautiful and special in your own way." But the Ugly Duckling didn't cheer up. She kept crying, and when the children came the next Sunday, she swam behind a rock to hide so they wouldn't call her ugly too. The older ducks started doing their special water tricks, but for the first time, the children didn't pay attention. Instead, they gathered around the newest duckling who was hiding behind the rock. "I don't know why this one is hiding. She's so cool. Look how many colors this one has. This one has its very own kind of quack. I love that this duck is different from the rest." The children cheered and took pictures of the Ugly Duckling, and suddenly, she didn't feel sad or ugly anymore. She started quacking her special quack and splashing with her spotted feathers. She felt happy because Mommy was right. She was special in her own way. The older ducks watched the children and realized they had been very wrong. Their little sister did have a lot of beautiful colors, and it was kind of neat that her voice was so different. They had been mean to call the new duckling ugly. That wasn't very nice at all. Just because something is different doesn't mean it's ugly. That night, they swam over and said, "We're very sorry that we were mean to you. Will you forgive us? We promise to never call you the Ugly Duckling again. Instead, we can call you Dora Duck." "That sounds great," Dora Duck said as she splashed away with her family. She felt special and loved, and they all lived happily ever after. The end.
Today I'm going to tell you a story about the elf and the shoemakers. Once upon a time, there was a family of elves who lived in a shoe store. There was a mommy elf, there was a daddy elf, there was a brother elf, and a sister elf. Elves are magical creatures who sleep all day and stay awake all night. And these elves were no different. Every morning as the sun rose, they would crawl into their tiny little elf beds hidden behind a door. By the time the man who owned the store came in, they'd all be sound asleep. The man never knew he had a family of elves in his store. He was too busy making and selling shoes to notice their tiny little elf beds behind the door. One day, the man was so busy that he didn't have time to finish making the shoes he was working on. When he left for the night, there were scraps of leather on the table. As the moon rose, the elves woke up. "What's this?" the daughter elf asked as she jumped onto the table to take a closer look. "Why, that's leather," Mommy Elf answered. "The man who owns this shop must have taken it out to make a pair of shoes, but he didn't have time to finish." "I have an idea," said Daddy Elf. "We should make the shoes to help him." "That's a great idea," the elves all cheered. The elves worked hard all night long, and as the sun was rising, they finished. They tucked themselves into their tiny little beds and fell fast asleep. When the man came in later that morning, he was so surprised to see a brand new pair of beautiful shoes on his table. He was so happy, but who did it? That night, the man left out an even bigger pile of leather, and sure enough, when he got back to the store the next morning, there was even more shoes waiting for him. Who was helping him? It was a mystery. "I know," said the man. "I will sneak back into the store in the middle of the night to see who was helping me." And that night, he did just that. He walked through the door and saw the family of elves working hard to turn the leather into shoes. The elves saw the man and got scared. "Ah!" they screamed. "Don't be scared," said the man as he knelt down. "I'm not mad at you." "You're not?" the daddy elf asked, and the rest of the family huddled behind him. "Of course not," the man laughed. "I want to thank you. You have been such a big help, and you've been making such beautiful shoes. It isn't right for you to do all that work and not be thanked." "You're welcome," the elf said proudly. "But I have a question," the man said. "Where did you come from?" "Right over here," the brother elf said as he pushed the big door aside. The man scrunched his eyes until he could make out the tiny elf beds. The daddy elf got worried, so he started saying, "Sir, please don't be mad at us for living in your store. It's been such a cozy home, and we hope you'll allow us to stay." But the man didn't answer. Instead, he jumped up and started running all over his store, gathering up bits of fabric and string. And the elves were so confused. What was this man doing? The man worked so fast that in a few minutes, he was done. He knelt back down and presented the elf with beautiful blankets that he had just sewn for them. "These are my thank you gifts to you," the man explained. "You're such great helpers that you are welcome to live in my store as long as you want." That morning, the elves curled up in their tiny little beds under their brand new blankets, and they slept better than they ever had. From that day on, the elves and the man lived and worked together in harmony. Every night, the elves made shoes for the man, and every day the man made elves thank you gifts like coats and mittens and even teeny elf shoes. They all lived happily together after all. The end.
Yeah.